Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's stream. I am Adam from UJAM. I'm here with Venus Theory. What's up, Cameron?
Howdy doody, buckaroonies, and monkey cop. Howdy doody.
Great. How's everybody doing today? Thanks for tuning in to today's stream. Today we've got a little bit of a special kind of hybrid stream going on. We're going to have a bit of a Q&A and an open dialogue with Cameron here for those of you who don't know him, to get to know better what he specializes in, what he's been working on, and some of his thoughts and philosophy. And those of you who do know him, you'll just get to hear more of the guy that you like, which is good. And then we'll switch over to a Gloom focus in the second half, where we'll look at Beatmaker GLOOM, which came out a few weeks ago. It's the ambient minimal Beatmaker title in UJAM's Beatmaker series. And as always, we will be raffling off one license to Gloom, so stay active in the chat. If you're asking questions or showing support, both are fine. You'll get entered into a random picker wheel, and Simon, who's running the UJAM chat, the UJAM account in the chat, will announce the winner towards the end of the stream. So, with that being said, hope everybody's doing well. Let's open up the conversation. Cameron, again, thank you for joining us. I know you're quite busy taking the time to do this. And like we've been joking, hassling and wrestling with the tech has been a bit of a crazy experience lately, but we're up and running. So, Cameron, let's just start generally. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Someone in the chat was already asking, where are you located? I don't know if you're comfortable sharing that. Tell us about your life, what your background is in music, what brought you into music, and what you're currently doing in music, I guess would be an interesting place to start with.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks for having me. So I live outside of Nashville, Tennessee, but I exist in my kind of like void of doom here. I call it the Bat Cave, so I just kind of come up here and work all day. So I got started in music very, very young. I wanted to be a drummer, and naturally my parents didn't want to buy like a 10-year-old a drum kit because that was a terrible idea. So I got into guitar. My dad's a guitar player, and my great grandpa was a guitar player and a musician in like the 50s, 60s, 70s. And I actually have his old Gibson guitar downstairs hung up next to a couple of his records. So music was always something I was very into, and I thought that was like the coolest thing ever, that, you know, my great grandpa made records, and I was like, you know, that's neat. So I wanted to make music, got a guitar because my parents wouldn't buy me a drum kit, and pretty much immediately after, it's like, all right, that's what I'm doing with my life. Like, that's the only thing I care about now. And from there, eventually got into bands and, you know, playing and whatever, got into home production because I grew up in a very, very small town where, you know, it's not like there were a bunch of musicians to like start a band with. So I had to learn how to make music. You know, I had Audacity, I had a very early version of FL and things like that, trying to put the pieces together. Eventually I got into Mixcraft. I got the actual CD from a Guitar Center.
Nice.
Which is like such a weird experience to think about now. Is like you used to go to a store to buy your DAW and then bring the box home and install it, which, like, you know, today is not even a thing. And yeah, from there just became more and more obsessed with it, and that's kind of what I've been doing ever since. Through that, eventually kind of got burnout on the band scene and like touring and all that, just because it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for people that continue to do that now from the days I knew them. You know, like when you're 19, going out and eating Hot Pockets for a year in a van is like awesome. But, you know, as you get to be like 20, 21, 22, it's like I just very quickly was like, this is not sustainable for me. I can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
So eventually got into just making other music and exploring electronic music and sound design and things like that. And through there, eventually started a YouTube channel. Some of you may know who I am, I guess. And, you know, from there, that just kind of opened up new doors to do sound design for like major companies and, you know, synthesizer companies and hardware companies and things like that. And alongside that, kind of grew into composing and writing for music libraries, doing sound design for trailer libraries, eventually getting into commissioned things. And these days, you know, leading up to now, most of what I do is working in video games and media composition, but primarily games these days. But I think that's just because I'm like a huge gamer dork. So
Nice.
when, you know, the opportunity comes up to work on a video game, I'm like, cool, sold. You know, don't even care what it pays. I just want to do it.
Yeah, that's a very cool space to be in. I've always thought that would be fun, and especially it sounds like, so you've got a pretty good background, solid background on sound design specifically. People were mentioning you've had experience with like modular synths and Euro racks and stuff, and so you're probably all over sound design, which makes sense in scoring in general because that's pretty sound design heavy. It is also obviously production, but it's so evolving and it's so, you know, there's a lot of palette layers and soundscapes that you really need to know the way in and out of. So that sounds like your domain there, and you're happy where you are now working on that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like I get to play video games and then decide what they sound like with the music and stuff. So it's like that's pretty ideal to me, and it's also a very systematic, I mean, kind of process, which I think that's how my brain tends to operate. Is like obviously like I am a creative person, but I think I'm more of an analytical person, so that just kind of tickles like the puzzle part of my brain where I like looking at a video game and the level of interactivity in that medium, and then trying to figure out different systems of like what can the music do, why can it do this, where can it go from here, you know, what other layers can we explore. Because when you're working in, you know, just regular music, you know, releasing albums and stuff, it's like you write a song, it plays back the same way, that's the album, you make a new album. And then film and stuff is pretty similar, right? Like when you're scoring to picture, it plays back the same way,
Right.
so I think that that's super fun and interesting still, but I really like how video game music makes you confront a lot of questions you don't normally have to ask. Like, when is someone going to hear this? When they do hear it, what else are they hearing? How many times might they hear this? How long might they be listening to it for? You know, what kind of information does this supply to the player? You know, are we driving them towards an action? Are we wanting them to second guess a decision they're about to make? You know, how do we communicate that in it's interesting because like with diegetic sound, you know, the sound that the player character in a video game would hear, the footsteps, the enemies, you know, whatever it is, the music is non-diegetic, like the player character is not hearing it, but with the meta of like a person playing a video game, it still counts as like diegetic sound as information. And I really like, I don't know how horribly confusing that is, just because it's like all opportunities are equal and you can do whatever you want.
Totally.
And I think that's just a super unique outlet for music that you don't really get that anywhere else.
No, yeah. It seems very open format, and like you said, that's an interesting kind of middle ground where like the person playing the game is in a way kind of the character, and you're interfacing between someone in the real world, but someone in this world that's been meticulously crafted with a certain aesthetic, and you want to balance all of the sounds that are important, like you said, the footsteps and the weapons or whatever's happening. Like everything has to feel like the same universe, which is really cool. So that seems like a really, really detail involved kind of type of scoring and production, which is cool. And we've already got people asking like, can Gloom be used in scoring? You know, Cameron did a video for us, Simon, on the UJAM account. Hopefully you can put the link to that video. It's a really awesome video. I watched the whole thing probably twice. What did you call it? Additive layering? Like there was a certain production technique that you were really demonstrating in how to create like a new game score featuring Gloom and building out different like atmospheric layers. So that like how was that? Is that a process that's normal for you? Is that like typically how you would build a game soundtrack, or was that just a good way to use Gloom in a score?
If time and budget allow, I really like that vertical layering system. You know, I like music that feels interactive in games, because there's a lot of games, especially older games, you know, where the music was just like, during this level you hear this loop, you know, the forest level, the desert level, the whatever. But I like that music can communicate more than that with the amount of tools we have now as game developers to, you know, make things change. Or like if you enter a conversation and then the mood of the narrative shifts, like the music can adapt to that. And then if you know, you're solving a puzzle, as you solve, like let's say it has 5 steps to solve the puzzle, as you solve each of those 5 steps, we can reward you with like a new layer to the music and things like that. And I think that that's super duper fun, but obviously from a technical standpoint, that is more work to implement and also to play test and troubleshoot, because sometimes, you know, bugs happen and you're like, uh-oh, all the music is playing all the time. Why is that? So if there's enough runway through the development process, I really like to approach things that way, as well as introducing even like pseudo-generative aspects to music, where if I'm writing a track, I might write, you know, the main melody, you know, let's say it's a 32 bar loop or whatever, but I might write that main melody 5 or 6 different ways. and then I might even chop that into little 4-bar phrases, and then the game audio engine can kind of pick which one it
Cool.
plays as
Yeah.
it progresses, so you get this like evolving soundtrack that doesn't feel super repetitive and stuff. So in some cases the game benefits from that, but in other cases it does just sound better to have like, this is the music in this part,
Hmm.
where it's like it's just a
Yeah.
loop over and over, and that works for this segment. So it really does depend, but I like that the options do remain open, and it does come down to like what there's a great quote from Jesper Kyd, who did the Hitman games and a bunch of other stuff, and the Warhammer games, which I love. But he just says, whenever I'm composing for a game, I always think to myself, what as a gamer is the most awesome thing that could happen right now? So I tend to think about that a lot.
Cool. Yeah.
Of, if you get into the boss fight, or if you find a secret puzzle, like what is the coolest possible thing that could happen musically here?
Yeah. That's really cool. We have some questions for you, Cameron. Well, for one thing, I would also like to know. I know there's a lot you're working on that you probably can't talk about, but someone was asking what games have you worked on? Is there stuff you could share that's already been released, or that you're already openly credited on? What are some scores of what were your favorite score works, I guess, that you've done recently?
Let's see, what's the most recent? Mini Airways, I did some licensed music for, which was really fun. It's like a lo-fi sort of indie-ish title of, you're an air traffic controller and you like solve little puzzles. That one was really fun. There's Warrior Tier, which is a Warhammer 40K like audio drama channel. I did the score for their latest episode. That was super fun. Avowed from Microsoft and Obsidian, I did that last year, I think. Yeah, last year. And let's see, outside of that, the most recent one is Don't Look at Grandma, which comes out in a couple weeks. I'm in like the middle of that one right now. That one's super fun. I've always wanted to work on a horror title because I think horror music is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So that one comes out in a couple weeks, and that's been super duper fun. I'm very excited for people to hear that, because it's got some very weird music in it too, which is fun. And then of course, like, to get to go all out with like horror, screechy, terrible noise and things like that was just a lot of fun to remove like tonality as an aspect of music.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, so people are also asking, are you familiar with the UJAM UFX series? And they're wondering if you've ever used those creative effects in any of your scores or anything. And if not, maybe that's
yeah. In the video I did for the channel, I basically used those to like do the entire mix.
Okay.
Because that was just quick and dirty. Like, I need a delay that does this, and the delay effects plugin, not the micro finisher, but the delay plugin, has these really fun like glitch finishers in it that
Right.
I don't totally understand what they're doing. I think that they're just playing with the timing of the delay lines and stuff, so you get these like weird glitchy things. So actually, for one of the tracks in Don't Look at Grandma, I ended up using that on one of the drum buses.
Nice.
Just to add this kind of like crispy, weird, glitchy texture to it. So stuff like that's always useful, because I think, as people can imagine, in the gaming industry, you're just working against deadlines. So
Sure.
I think anything that presents like a faster solution as a means to an end is always pretty valuable.
Oh yeah.
Where it's like, I could sit here hand cutting these drums and designing like glitch things, and sometimes that's necessary, but other times it's like, I just need this to feel a little more interesting. You're only going to hear this for 30 seconds. Like, that's totally fine.
Yeah, true. Chasing deadlines and kind of just, that's actually how I originally, before I started working with UJAM, I found the micro when it was free, and it was just like, whoa, like you could just do this thing quickly. Like, I'm trying to finish my song. I just need something to do something cool to these chords. Like, I actually don't really care, and I'm waiting to hear something I like, and just kind of drag pieces around. So that's cool. Yeah. So you have used those, and I imagine maybe finishers here and there too. I think that's
Yeah, the micro finisher, the little one.
Yeah.
I've done that on a few projects I'm working on now, where it's just like, don't know, need like filter and reverb, and need it to move around a little bit. Does it sound interesting? Great, sold. I can move on to the next thing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's a good transition to the topic. So in terms of efficiency, We have a controversial thing in our industry now, which is obviously artificial intelligence. And so, in terms of efficiency, you've now got tools that can completely craft songs from scratch, from Stable Diffusion, and they're improving and they're getting better. And they even have stem separation, which currently is not the best, but still can work. What's your general standpoint on how the industry is headed with AI? Do you think overall it's beneficial? Or not? And do you think it's beneficial to the artists and creators as opposed to the commercial side, like the people who are building these games or these films? What's your general take on AI? I'm sure this is a topic that a lot of people would be curious about.
Yeah. I've done a couple of videos about, my long form feelings on it, but I guess like just to aptly summarize it, generally from the creative standpoint, I don't think it's interesting and I don't think it's rewarding. And a lot of the times, through diffusion models and stuff, it's a smoke and mirror show of like, it's an amalgamation of ideas that approximate something that sounds loosely like another thing. There was a quote from, I think, Robin Williams' daughter recently talking about people creating AI footage of Robin Williams. And it's just like, it's like a weird hot dog, I think is what she said, where it's just this very processed, like synthetic version of an idea. So I think the creative community tends to suffer from it. And I think a lot of it is because these AI companies have just openly stolen music, which is so weird because if I, like let's say you wrote a song and I remixed your song, right? Like I owe you part of that credit and royalties because that is your intellectual property. And I think it's funny that when you have enough money, you just get to circumvent laws and rules for the sake of like, this industry is valuable, shareholders are happy. And I think on the company side, it's a weird question because from a very, very indie standpoint, like let's say you're an independent filmmaker in college, like obviously you have no budget,
Right.
or a very minuscule one. You rented a camera, that costs money. You hired an editor and a colorist, that costs money. So like, if you need a composer, that's expensive and maybe you don't know anyone. So if you used AI to like spit out a score that just kind of works, I don't know that I necessarily take an issue with that because in the optimist in me wants to believe that that filmmaker will still want to hire a real composer one day.
Right.
There's something about the humanity of collaborative mediums that I think still makes it valuable. But of course, people will see it as a shortcut. And if a shortcut is present in the name of, capitalist interest, people will take it.
Sure.
And I think that's really unfortunate because it drives down, I think, the value of the medium overall.
Yeah.
Where it's like, if you could have GPT or whatever spit out like a TV series for you to watch, like, is anyone really gonna want to watch that? Is that really that cool?
Yeah.
And I don't think so. I mean, some people, like the broad public, may not care with like music or photos or whatever, but I think the people that are driven to art and the people who are really passionate about it are always going to see through that layer of like, oh, congratulations, you made something. And I think the funny part about it is that, to me, I think AI in a weird way has solved one of the biggest problems in the music industry, which is like the supply and demand issue of with streaming and digital music and whatever. Everybody was making music. Everyone's a producer now. Like it's really easy to start making very high quality music. And there's not a lot of people who want to listen to everything that's out there. I mean,
Right.
There's hundreds and hundreds of millions of songs on streaming services. I have not listened to all of them, and I don't think anyone else has either. But now with AI, like that has extrapolated, I mean, orders and orders of magnitude more. Like there's so much just garbage out there. But that's almost a good thing because now if you're a human and you're doing something interesting,
Right.
that now makes digital media more valuable because it was made by a person with an interesting idea.
Exactly.
And like AI's affected me in a lot of weird ways I didn't think it would. But on the same end, like especially music licensing, a lot of the music I wrote for libraries was, it's like soft piano, soft strings. It sounds like something that works in like a Netflix sad episode about feelings. And my licensing catalog has just taken a complete nosedive. Like I make almost nothing from licensing now. But I'm almost kind of okay with it because it's like that wasn't that creatively rewarding to begin with.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, if I can't do that and I can't depend on that, what else can I do with my time? And now I think it challenges me to keep trying new ideas and exploring things that I wouldn't have taken as much of a risk on, because now the risk can pay off better when something is more weird.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
even if it's not like the best record of all time, if it's interesting, that's what's valuable. And as a human, you know, like I think one of the things I said in my videos is like the computer doesn't have a happy accident.
Yeah.
And I think that that's incredibly valuable. So like if you keep trying to dig at your own artistic inclinations and whatever, no matter what you do, you're always one step ahead of that because there's a latency there,
Hmm.
right? Like you put out an album, the AI has to go scrape it and make a version of it that sounds loosely correct. But now you're already another album ahead trying something new. You
Totally.
know, at best, the machine will always be a watered down iteration of whatever you're going to do
Right.
until we reach, you know, the point of AGI, which like at that point it's a very different conversation.
Yeah. I I
But
I
yeah,
feel
I mean, I'm not all that worried about it currently. It's annoying, but it's like in complete fairness, so is the rest of the creative industry.
totally, totally. Yeah, I'm very similar with you there. I think that the key establishing the differentiating factor is, like you said, the AI is not going to make happy accidents. It's going to follow prompts. It's going to give you things that you ask for, obviously based on
Yeah,
a set of references that exist. So I do think that, like, you know, every time you have a super influential artist come to the limelight, they've done something unique or they have some branding or story that puts them into this new level, and then everyone tries to match that. And I think once you're in this like pop realm of, oh, there's this new genre of hyperpop or whatever, there are a
sure.
lot of artists that will get up to that level and just kind of mimic that, and that's where AI can do okay. Like some people might just be like, I want a song that sounds like Charlie XCX, and because that's in now, maybe they get lucky. But I think those tiers, like getting to the next tier of innovation, probably won't happen with AI exclusively. So you're going to need
Yeah,
human
and
artists. Yeah.
it's always going to be just like the most boring iteration of an idea. And some people are going to be okay with that, which I think that's just a realistic look at it. You know, some people just won't care. And I think in fairness, it's like I've never listened to an album with my wife where she goes, you know, well, the fact that they used the Sennheiser on the toms there, maybe it would have benefited from more of like an open ribbon to the room. Like my wife doesn't care about that. She just like it just needs to sound good. And some people are going to be okay with that, but I think the people that really engage with art and appreciate it, it's never going to be fun and it's going to be boring.
Yeah.
And you know, kind of like to your point, there's a fantastic video from Kashmir from years ago, something about like stop how to stop being a DJ and start being an artist or something like that. I
Mm.
think it's called. Highly recommend everyone watches it. But he makes one really good point in there of like people don't remember the best; they just remember the first.
Hmm.
And I think that that's a really good point with like AI, especially is like if everybody's over here looking at this and this is what's working, all it really takes is one person to like find something that nobody else is looking at and
Yeah.
apply it to that,
Yeah.
and suddenly it's like this new wave of creative genius, which like you know, Skrillex, I think a great example of that, where like I don't, you know, I think he's a fantastic producer. It's just not my thing. But you know, UK dub and all that stuff was like dark, minimal, whatever. And then here's this like skinny kid from an emo metal band or something that just goes, but what if it was really loud?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then suddenly like he exploded. And I think as a creator, that's all it takes. Is there's a quote from a photographer, I believe, and I'm not sure who it was, but she said something to the effect of like, as an artist, I understand I don't actually create anything. I just find things I think are interesting and make them bigger.
Yeah. Wow.
And I think that's a really good way to look at it is like, if this is the thing that you're interested in, what is the thing that you feel it's missing? And if you can contribute that to it, it's like that's how you establish yourself in that space.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, that's a big belief of mine too. I watched an interview between Jay Shetty and Madonna, which is really interesting, and it's kind of a very spiritual conversation, but it's about their practices. And then she mentioned something that's like, she's not she doesn't create, this isn't her content that comes out of her. She's just the one kind of channeling it and catalyzing the idea and make it, like you
Sure.
said, making it bigger. And that's I find myself feeling that way about art too. So that's something.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I think making music or anything is very much like a spiritual practice for me on some level. There
totally.
was what's his name, Chris Robinson, I think, the singer of the Black Crowes. There's an old VH1 behind the music thing, which God, I miss that show. That was such a fun time. But he talks about how he thinks making music is like there's this universal song that exists, and like when you know that feeling when you're making a song and you're just like really feeling it all of a sudden, you're like, oh, this you know, this rules, like this
Yeah.
really hits. He talks about how like there's this universal song, and like as artists we just get to grab like our little piece
Yeah.
of it now and again, and I think that's kind of what it is it's just chasing that feeling.
Absolutely.
And I think that people who like, again, music and art and whatever, that's the layer that's always going to be missing from AI. And I think that's where the smoke and mirror show stops.
Totally.
Like it can't do that.
Totally. Yeah. And I think Rick Rubin said something in his book, or maybe an interview, something like, if you're writing a song and then a song comes out that's very similar and you didn't finish your song, it's not that someone stole your idea, it's that idea's time has come. So someone got to it first. And yeah, it's like this whole ethereal, like we're pulling ideas from something that exists already in humanity. So yeah, that's it sounds like general alignment. I think most artists would feel that way too. But so I'm gonna zoom out a little bit. So I'm gonna ask you a couple more workflow questions about you, and then we're gonna switch to Gloom.
Sure.
So we've got something that might be interesting to some people, especially the ones that are newer to you. Two questions. One is, do you have advice for people that are aspiring to be doing what you're doing, or kind of to get to where you're at? And then also related to that, do you see any common patterns of mistakes people make, or things that discourage them, or patterns that they, that you maybe struggled with and learned or identified was blocking you? So two-part question. What advice would you give new people? And then how have you worked around mistakes? What are common mistakes or discouragements that you might face during your journey?
Sure. That's a very multi-layered question.
Take it one by one.
I think the best advice I can have, like, especially getting into games and stuff, is that it's much easier than you think. Especially if you live in a city or like near a city. There's often indie game jams and like indie game developer meetups. I mean, here in Nashville, there's one that's like, I think it's every Sunday there's a meetup. So like I can just go there and meet people who are in the space, who have interesting ideas, see what they're doing, whatever, and make connections. Like, it's very easy to network with that. And even through the power of the internet thing, I hear that the internet is becoming a pretty big deal now. There's like online game jams, game developer forums, things like that. And you can easily get in and start talking to people and contributing and whatever. And I think therein also lies the biggest mistake. And I think it does come from us being in such a social media heavy era, where people approach everything with kind of a mindset of like, what do I stand to gain out of this conversation? Like, are you going to follow me? Are you going to hire me? Are you going to, add me on Instagram? Are you going to, whatever? And I think the transactional nature of creative work is something people get way too attached to. And if you're the advice I always give is, if you want to get into any creative space, the best thing you can do is just be the person other people want to get a beer with.
Right.
Like, I know people who are incredibly talented composers or sound designers or whatever, and like they're just kind of garbage. Like, they're mean or grumpy or entitled or just like whiny, and nobody wants to be around that. So like, if you have a decently put together website that looks polished, and like you have a couple good pieces of concept music for a portfolio or whatever, and you just come across as like a cool person who just wants to help see an idea through, that is like the easiest foot in the door you can get. And if on top of that you also learn the basics of like how a video game works and how audio and stuff gets implemented, you can learn Fmod in like a long weekend. Blender is free. Godot is a game engine that's completely free. Like, you can build a kind of crappy video game on your own and just learn how things get put together. And if you can come into a conversation without an expectation of like a transaction occurring, where you could just see someone who's working on something interesting and be like, oh, cool. And like, I noticed like your footsteps are non-directional, like they're just always stereo. And, like they're not location based or something. Like, hey, did you know that like in, Unity, you can just tie like a 2D audio generator to that, and it, then it becomes positional. And if you can be someone who wants to help elevate someone else's idea, that's always the easier way to get work.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not here just for the paycheck. I'm here because I like this idea and I want to make it as good as possible.
That's cool. Yeah.
And
yeah. Just like
in the indie space, that often means working for free, but like,
yeah, what are you going to do if you're trying to climb the ladder? Yeah.
It's one of those things of like, if you do that a couple times and it, you can finance your way to do it, then great. Like, that's awesome. Like, I fully believe in the power of a day job. That's why I still have one.
Yeah, right. No, yeah.
Like,
sure.
That means I can take on other projects that I just really want to see through, and, maybe just ask, like, when the game releases, can I just have like 2% of sales?
Totally.
And I will help you make the audio and score the game and whatever. And sometimes it works. Sometimes it very much does not. But Yeah, I think that's the thing is like you've just always got to remain someone who can be a resource rather than a drain.
Yeah, because then people want to be engaged with you, and that's just how you network in general. It's how you get further. You try new things, you know? Yeah, very cool. Good question. I mean, good answer. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, good question. Terrible answer.
All right, very last question for you, and then we'll switch to Gloom. Someone asked up in the chat about beat block. So for the more veterans, not the newbies, how do you surpass writer's block or producer's block? Or like, let's say, I mean, you're somebody who works with deadlines, so you don't really have the luxury of waiting until you're inspired sometimes. So what, do you have any tools in the toolbox of like, how do I crack my head open and just find some new goop, you know? Like what's your, yeah.
I mean, I've been doing music for like 20 years now. And the longer I've been doing it, the more I kind of realize, like, I don't think that writer's block really exists because I think often what we're chasing as creators is novelty more than anything. So I don't think it's like you genuinely have writer's block. I think it's just that you don't have any interesting ideas that your brain wants to listen to.
Yeah.
And maybe this is because of like the new wave of production where it's like you download samples, you buy loops, you know, your DAW can auto mix and whatever. And it's like, you're assuming so much control outside of your own input, and I think that the result becomes like I make drum and bass, and every song is at 174 beats a minute, and it needs like an amen break and a respace and a pad with reverb on it and a vocal hook and whatever. And I think you get bored of that pattern, right? Like I've been there and I've done that. So one of my favorite rules about things is, if I'm completely stuck, like one, nothing motivates you like a deadline. You know, if you don't get this done, you will not have like food and shelter and water. That'll make you figure some things out pretty quick. But you know, not all of us have that because you know, some of us aren't working on a thing with a deadline. We're just an artist who wants to release an album.
Right.
It's done when it's done, and I don't think that's a good way to approach that. But that's a different conversation. But I think when it comes to making music, if I'm totally completely like out of juice, my first thing is like I set some rules. Anything will do. Like, all right, I have to write this in G Lydian, and it has to use a harp and a hang drum and a bass drum. And that's enough to where like if you give yourself a framework, that's enough for kind of like a little box that the seed starts to grow in.
Totally.
Because you have like some parameters to start with, and especially if you force yourself to do something you don't normally do, you're kind of like, I don't like that. Why don't I like that? I don't know. But what if I do this to it? And then you're like, okay, now that sounded good. And and then you're like, okay, maybe Lydian isn't the right move. Maybe we switch over to this and
Right.
But then my other thing I like to do is if I am working in a creative framework, like let's say I'm, 5 months deep in a video game, like the game has a sound by then, like what types of instruments and how the score works and whatever. My other thing with that is like, if I have rules, I break one. And I think that's often a pretty good way to figure out something new to do with it. The example I always give is like Linkin Park, right? And I'm talking about like Linkin Park, OG Linkin Park, because they came out when I was young, and it was this really big deal because here's like heavy metal music and, new metal and all that. And it's all like, and it's some, person going like, oh, I'm mad, whatever. And then here comes this group that does like heavy metal and stuff. But what if there was rapping on it?
Yeah.
And suddenly like, boom, that was like such a huge creative. And I think that that's like such a beautiful formula is like, if you have assumptions about anything, just challenge one of them.
Yeah, totally.
And it could be anything, like just, why does drum and bass have to be at 174?
Yeah.
Don't know. Or like, if you're working on an orchestral piece, like, why does the cello always have to like support the bass line?
Yeah.
Things like that. Or, literally anything. And I think that's such a great way to break your brain out of pattern recognition mode and get you back into like creative mode.
Totally.
So those are kind of my two hacks that so far haven't failed me.
Cool. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I would +1 both of those. Generally just breaking your brain's pattern. Sometimes you can't let your brain be in full control because your brain is going to be in a state of being, in a mood that's not inspired. Like I've been doing this thing, I built this little randomizer where it like randomizes all the plugins and instruments I own. And if I'm starting a new song, I'll just be like, oh, I forgot I owned that. Let me see what's in there,
Yeah.
And then just like, oh, maybe there's something cool. And like you said, you could set rules and then decide to break them. That's fine because you're chasing the end production. You don't know what it's going to end up being. So it's totally
right, because that's the nice thing is like as an artist, you're the one that sets the bar. Whenever you put it out and say that that's what it is, no one can say you're wrong at that. And I think the most powerful piece of artistic and creative freedom is just to understand that you are simultaneously the best and worst at the thing that you do. You know, like it doesn't matter if you say that it's done and that's the way it is. No one can fault you on that.
For sure. Yeah. And then you also said something about like specifically to game scoring, there's already a bit of a world existing in the project. So that's like a frame of reference. Like if you're writing to a world building, that's an easy way to kind of get out of your own head. And I've been doing that with songs too. I don't score, but like sometimes I make visual mood boards. If I have writer's block, I'll be like, what does this song look and feel like? And that's a way I've been using AI, image generation and then video generation from the image. And then I'll write write to the visuals and I'll get inspiration, you know? So yeah, just any way to break out of the brain, I would agree with you there, +1 for sure. So
yeah, I think I said that in the video for UJAM is like my number one rule is like, as soon as I start thinking, it's over.
Yeah.
Like you can't do that. You've just got to like walk in, assume nothing, and just let it ride. And don't worry about it. Don't think about it. We can do that later. Like that's what mixing and editing and arrangements for. Like for now, the only job is like get the idea out.
Yeah, totally. Just like get into flow state. That's all that matters. Yeah. Let's see. Someone asked a question for Adam and Venus Theory. Beautiful virtual instruments equals yay, including actual live vocalists or players to stay connected to the ground. How important is that? Yeah, I guess how often do you use live session recordings or vocalists? How important do you think that is even?
As much as I can. I personally, I play a lot of different instruments, as you can probably see by like the background of different things here. So whenever I can, I do love integrating like real hardware or like, you know, playing my guitar or my mandolin or my cello or my dilruba or whatever, like just to bring in that. I think there is such a distinct humanity that comes from acoustic performances. And I think it's because of like the chaos of acoustic and analog systems.
Yeah.
Where, you know, the non-linearity is the goal. And sometimes you don't have that benefit. You know, even Avowed, for instance, there was very, very little live audio in that because like I had to make that huge soundtrack for this like giant game in such a crazy crunch. So, you know, in those cases, I don't think that that's a wrong way to approach it. I think it's just you have to find a way to make the music still feel interesting in some way. And I think, you know, automating things and stuff, I'm a big fan of that just to kind of replicate some of those like non-linear behaviors and not just like not use things as they are. You know, I think presets are always best served as a starting point for a bigger idea. And I think, you know, like Don't Look at Grandma, I think pretty much all the score of that game, outside of some of the horror, like weird tracks, the major music cues of the game were all done with plugins just because it's like time and budget do not allow me to you know, play with my toys. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No.
Anyone who tells you that's the wrong way to make music obviously has like never done anything worthwhile in their life anyway.
Yeah. There's back when like electronic producing was really like when all of the tech and software for music production was starting to kick up, like, I don't know, a decade ago or whatever, there was a lot of like, and even with my father, you know, there's a lot of like rock musicians and traditional band instrumentalists that looked down on like electronic music and using a DAW. But it's just like now you're limiting the tools you have available as an artist. But I will say, like, from my end, there is something about analog recordings, picking up a bass and recording something, or like whatever you have accessible. If you have the time, like you said, you might not always have the time to do that, but if you do, sometimes the recording, there's just some magic beef in it. Like I record a bass line and it just hits harder than my plugin and it makes the song sound genuine, you know? So
and I'm not sure if that's even a real thing. I think it literally is just
psychosomatic.
The way our brains form a connection to a thing is like, if I was really there and really played the bass line, you know, like I don't think the song sounds that much different than if you use like, I don't know, what's the big bass library, like Trillion or something.
Trillion,
that
that's
like
one of them.
A Fender P bass or whatever. I don't know that the song is any better for that, but I think there's such a better connection to it because I think it maybe even drives up a sense of like loss aversion, where like I have put some part of myself into the performance on this track that I wouldn't be able to do solely with plugins. So it makes it that much more special, and I think that we form a deeper connection to our own work through that. So, you know, I'm always in favor of trying to do something that turns a song into sort of like a journal entry.
Absolutely.
You know, like I can remember where I was when I wrote that song and like what I was thinking about and what I was going through and whatever. And I don't know that you necessarily get that in other situations. I'm
No,
not
for
sure
sure.
why that is.
Yeah. It's just about making it your own. You know, it's part of the inspiration. But very cool. Yeah. I mean, so I think it's a good point to segue over to Gloom. We've got some people chanting Gloom in the chat. So we will take a look. I'll switch the scene over now to Ableton, and we will take a look at Gloom real quick. So we've got Ableton Live with Gloom pulled up here. So yeah, I mean, typically when we go through new plugins, we just kind of show some sounds. We give the chance for people in the chat to request to hear certain things. I like to step through the kits. I mean, being that it's a Beatmaker, there's 10 iconically different drum kits that feed into these 20 iconically different styles, the MIDI phrase packages, and then very creative mix mode effects and whatnot. So, I mean, usually I just play a couple presets, let people hear some stuff, and then wait for the chat to start, you know, the catalyzing into some discussion. And then also Cameron, if there's stuff, I mean, you've used Gloom a lot by now when you made that video and you built that score out. So if there's some
I think I made like 10 different tracks before I found one I was happy with.
Yeah, so
I got very familiar with it very quickly.
Nice. Yeah, so if you have any favorite things or whatever that you want to showcase or look at closely, we can do that too. But so again, yeah, everyone active in the chat asking questions, we will raffle off one license to Gloom if you don't already have it. And there is a free trial, as with all the UJAM products. It's 7 days, I believe. So no excuse to not go play with it and see if it convinces you on its own. But yeah, let's just play a few presets here. I'm just going to play a little and then we'll see what comes up. So a reminder, this is the minimal ambient Beatmaker title. So we really stepped into this kind of like nostalgic, liminal, atmospheric space. So it has a lot of applications like minimal ambient, minimal techno. You could do, I use it a lot in lo-fi, just anything where this like kind of quiet, hushed, like gentle percussion is what you're after. And then there's a really unique control here, which just like washes everything out, that kind of just like super sound design, experimental kind of thing. And so we will go through some effects too. And so if you're familiar with Beatmaker 3 already by now, everything's the same about the instrument that you know. There's the mixer view, there's the loop browser, you have the one-shots on the white keys, you got the loops on the top. You can drag and drop the loops for editing. You can edit the MIDI. All the accessibility that you've come to know in Beatmaker 3 by now is still totally valid and accessible in Gloom. But let's go through some kits just so you can hear the spread. I'll turn the effects down so you can just hear the raw, like what the design kits sound like in their essence. Someone asked how many kits. There are 10 kits. Every Beatmaker title has 10 kits. Every kit has 16 unique instrument samples. So you've got, 160 sounds in each title. This is all being played with the same phrase style, by the way. So you're just hearing the drum swap out. But you'll notice quite a spread already. Some are a little more like computery, electronic feeling, but still minimal feeling. And some are like, I like these ones that feel almost more acoustic or like wooden, kind of like something about that kick stomp kind of like reverberates in my bones. Yeah. And there's so many phrases in here. Like there's all different patterns. There are some that are more like kind of house, like 4 on the floor for that minimal tech house kind of vibe. So Cameron, how did you find yourself using Gloom when you first started the project? Like, did you just poke through presets first, or did you look at the kits?
Yeah, pretty much. That's usually like whenever I get a new plugin, the first thing I do is like whack through some presets just to figure like, what does this do? Where can it go? Because I think, you know, the goal of presets is to show like variety and then like how far you can push things, because there's always like the weird preset that has tons of processing, and then there's more like bare bones presets where it's like, okay, cool, this is like the vibe of this plugin or pack or whatever. But yeah, I think pretty much the second thing I then did was like on the main tab you have the effects mix thing over to the left, and then you have the other effects over to the right. So like the kit diffuse, sweep, and then the effects mix over there. I think the next thing I did was tie those to my little MIDI fader box I have over here, just so I could like hold down a key, listen to a pattern, and kind of like push different automations into it of like where does it go, and like the sweep being kind of like the tilt EQ thing of like bring out the low end and then like drop it all back in, and
right
stuff like that.
Yeah, those are
it was nice though, because I have a very similar design philosophy in my own instrument libraries of like I think the best things have like 5 or 6 controls, because you just want to start making music with it,
right,
instead of like here's something that has like a 10-page manual that it's going to take a week for me to learn all the things that it does.
Yeah, that was a key mentality when we redesigned Beatmaker, because like the special control you said, diffuse, that's a good example of how quickly you can totally change the sound, but it's so accessible right on the front page. So I'm going to dial that in so you guys can hear that. Let's go with a quicker style here. So totally washed out kind of style here. Let's turn down the other ambiances and go through some kits.
There's another effect in there too I like. I don't know if it's in the effects side or what, but there's one where it's just like I think it's like a gated reverb type of thing where the reverb only swells in after, and that was like a really cool effect where it just made every impact like feel super heavy.
Yeah, it could be one of the mix modes, but we also have the ambiances, which you can access in the mixer. There are some more creative, like a lot of these are reverbs or delays, but there are, it could be an ambience, I'm not sure which one, but it could also be, let's see, the mix mode, there's one called rewind, maybe it's this. That's just like a rewind kind of swell. That might not be the one, but there's quite a lot in here. Yeah, so let's see. So if the diffuse control, like it does one thing very well, but if that's not what you're looking for, you've got 12 unique mix modes. I'll step through them briefly. Let's just pick a kit that sounds pretty solid here. Yeah, let's start with this one, and we'll just go through a couple. So Smile is kind of like a fidelity enhancer. It's a smiley face EQ curve, kind of. So you'll get like a little boomier bass, a little crisper highs. Tape Toast, if I recall, is like a tape kind of saturation. You can hear some harmonics in like the low end. This one I think is more creative, Glitch Fill. I think this is like a more glitchy one. Yeah, more digital kind of. Part of what we were going for with Gloom was we wanted to give easy accessibility into just like dissolving and breaking up the drums and like throwing them into space, kind of. So like you do get glitchy stutters and stuff, but they're not like dry or sharp. They should be kind of pleasing and ethereal, kind of just to match the general aesthetic of the thing. Driver, I think this is kind of just like an overdrive. It's a beefy thing. Yeah, like distortion a bit. Sweet.
I always love like a ridiculously distorted kick drum. It's so fun.
Yeah,
or my favorite is I'll take a kick drum like that, put that through like a huge reverb, and then I'll put like a massive distortion after that. So it's just this like massive like asteroid impact sound.
Yeah, if you wash it out, like you can make some crazy distorted, loud, and obnoxious thing, but then you can like make it sound kind of far away, and then it's like, whoa, that's really cool. Rewind we already showed, but let's go through some other ones here. Downgrade. This one I think is kind of a combination lo-fi like downgrading thing.
Yeah, it's like a bit crushy thing if I remember right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sample rate reduction.
Yeah, and at the top here it's extreme, which is always fun. And yeah, all these mix modes, for people who maybe are still new to Beatmaker, they're not single effects. Like it's not just a bit crusher. It's some meticulously crafted modulated chain of effects. They're all multi-effects modes that our sound designers will create. But the only thing is that we make it easily accessible to you in a 0 to 100 slider. So it will seem like it's just one effect, but they're really like, with each Beatmaker title, we're inventing new effects specific to the title. And that's part of why I think they're so quickly gratifying when you're using them. At least for me. And then let's see, cross filter. You get kind of on one end, you get low passing, and the other end kind of high passing. Yeah, this one adds.
Maybe that was the one I was thinking of. Yeah, that one was kind of cool.
Yeah, it adds like some.
I think I was using that on like the percussion where I would just tap in like a hi-hatty rhythm, and that would just add this nice kind of like extra, syncopation to it or something.
Yeah, I think it just adds some kind of higher, like in the higher percussive range, like iterations, and I think they're pretty spread too. It's nice. Blanket. That one just kind of feels like it's suppressing it a little bit. It makes it a little like more tucked. And then this one's fun, actually. This one's fun to automate. It's kind of like a riser, like a mock riser effect. So he actually added like more beat iterations, so it's like subdividing the kick, even though this is just the phrase. At the top, you get like way more.
There's like a frequency shifter or something in there too, but it's not touching the kick, which is nice. So like you get this nice deep kick, but like the percussion and stuff starts rising and rising and rising.
And even I think when I was making like a demo for Gloom, I just found some sweet spot in here that was just resonating nicely, because you do get that like resonant peak from that frequency shifter or whatever. Like even that is kind of like, what am I hearing? It's kind of weird, you know? Yeah, but the effects are ton. I think this is an overkill one too, Mangle. These are fun. Yeah, this one is more like random rhythmic manipulation, which is always interesting. So yeah, those are the mix modes in essence. But we had a couple questions. Someone, how do you do the raffle? You just be active in the chat, ask questions, show your support. Your name will be entered. At some point soon, Simon will stop collecting names, and then he'll announce. I think he said there were 2 winners, actually. Sometimes we do one. But yeah, I'll go through a couple main presets again, because a preset captures everything. It's changing the MIDI pattern, it's changing the kit, it's changing the effects, and then also the mixer. Like we were talking about, it is easily accessible on the front page, but if you do need to change specific things, you can go to the mixer. There's a little limiter section. There's control over every single instrument, which is new in Beatmaker 3 compared to the old Beatmakers. You have individual instrument panning. You have individual instrument saturation and filters, and you can swap out any of the sounds. So a preset also could be a unique kit. So our preset designers might have swapped out the snares or the hats. So the presets are really the most like, wow, this is what this instrument can do. So I'll just play through a couple more presets, and then I'll try to take a look at the chat too. Ooh, that one's cool.
Oh, that's the one. Yeah, I think that was one of the presets where it has that like really big reverse
that
swelling type of behavior.
It must be an ambience glitch. Yeah, glitch fill. So the ambiences, they're always designed like the first 12. There's 17 ambiences, but the first 12 are designed to piggyback on mix modes, so they have the same name. So the sound designer designs an ambience that goes best with that mix mode. So if I'll actually demonstrate that here. Let's turn down the special control, and let's go to glitch fill. So this, I'll dial in the effect first, and then I'll add in its supplementary ambience, and you guys can hear the pairing. So here's the raw kit. That one might be halftime. It's pretty slow. Yeah, it's halftime. Let's make it normal. So you do have the micro timing settings here. So I'll dial in the effect now. So that's really cool already, but let's see what happens with the ambience mode that matches now. Let's just make sure we have the same one selected. Glitch fill, we do. So let's take a listen to the ambience.
Yeah, I love that like momentum.
Yeah.
Because I think that was what I did when I first opened it. Was like I opened, it might have been this exact kit. And then I just like hit the kick drum, and it just has this like boom, and then like, and then you just kind of like naturally feel out this like groove with it, which is really, really fun. Someone was asking about loading your own samples. One thing worth pointing out too, that I did in one track that didn't end up going into the tutorial was, you can actually get the MIDI information from this and then run that into like another drum rack if you want. So if you wanted to like layer your own kicks or whatever, you can also like output the information, which is pretty fun.
Yeah, the MIDI is accessible. I always do that in a workflow. I'll be like, oh, this kit's pretty close, but like usually I need a different kick. Like I'm really like meticulous with the kick design or sometimes the snares, so you can take out,
or if you just want to layer like another drum kit in like a chorus or something, it's really easy because like you literally just grab it and slap it onto another track, and then it's like the exact groove. Or you could like put this groove on another track and like change the hi-hat pattern or something, you know.
Totally. Yeah, that's super accessible. We made sure that the MIDI, like at the very least, you need to have the MIDI. Maybe someday in the future we'll just also have sample export. Like there's a lot of features that we want to add to this thing over time. It's really just a growing ecosystem, but with that, we want to make sure every title we're releasing is like offering seriously like a lot of value, because 10 new drum kits, there's a lot of potential for brand new sounds that were not in the catalog. Same with the effects. Like I said, they're designed from scratch. So it's no easy task. We actually are like, hey, this is the world of this title. Let's make effects that supplement that world. And then in the future, wherever we go with the UJAM catalog, there's so much essence in there that you can interchange and whatnot. So that's the thing that I like the most about Beatmaker, because like one title, it might not work for every song you're working on, but if you start there, you can find some really unique ideas, and then you can check out what the other titles have too. So
Mixing kits, yeah. So on the main interface there, you can see the little pencil icon down on the bottom of like the individual sounds.
Yep.
So that's where you can actually go in and like tweak the different available kits and stuff. So yeah, you can tweak your, like you can have your own kits and presets and whatever if you want.
Yeah, so if I do like the snare, but let's say I don't, then I can go in here and you get a little preview when you click them.
And then you also have the sound controls there as well, which is worth pointing out. So like if one of them has too much tail, you could just like drop the decay, or if you want it to be a little snappier, you could like up the pitch a little bit or whatever.
Right. You can pitch it up. I love pitching it. It's good for tuning.
Which I think that's also automatable. I don't remember, but I think that's yeah. So you can also automate this too, which is kind of fun. So like if you want your hi-hats to kind of like shift up or something, you can call that up in an automation lane.
True. Yeah, there's a lot of control.
Which sounds weird, but it is fun. No, I recommend it.
Especially because also the cool thing is when you're previewing these sounds in the kit, like when you're changing the kit out, that output is going through the bus too. So you'll hear how the mix is. Like you'll hear the ambience and the mix mode affecting it, because the sound is underneath everything. So when you're swapping it out, you do have a real-time kind of cue of what it'll sound like in the song, you know. But yeah, if you did want...
Also, one trick that's fun that I guess I'll point out is like if you go to the kick drum and you up the attack of a kick drum, it's also a very fun way to get this kind of like woof, 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 like almost like a techno kick rumble type feel.
Yeah.
Where you just get like the texture and tail of a kick. It's a very fun thing for layering.
Yeah, you can. The attack is basically a fade. It's not a transient boost. It's actually, you're controlling the attack like on a synth, so you can remove the transient. And that's kind of what Cameron's talking about. Yeah, that's cool.
So then if you have like because there's two kicks in there, so if you play both kicks at the same time, you now get like a kick and then like an extra kind of blooming tail to it, which is kind of a fun way to like, I don't know, doodle your own kicks together.
Totally. Yeah. Can anything be randomized? Currently, I don't think there's randomization. There is for the loops. So if you go into the loop browser here, you can, similarly to changing the samples, you can assign, like I could preview a loop. And then if I like the pattern, I can assign it to one of the black keys. And then I think the randomizer will actually randomize what phrases are loaded here. So if you're looking for pattern inspiration, you can randomly assign patterns to the keys. But currently for drum kits, there's not a randomization. Let's see, what other questions we got here? Oh, they already announced the winners. Hang on, let me try to see who those are. The spin wheel has spoken. Congrats to Salters B Davis 4 and DJ Juno 106. So you guys won free licenses to Beatmaker GLOOM. Congratulations, and thanks everybody for participating. And if you didn't win and you still don't have GLOOM, definitely try out the trial. I mean, you'll be able to explore anything we didn't get to cover today. But yeah, I think, I mean, is there anything more closely that you want to look at, Cameron, or anyone else in the chat?
I mean, I think the other thing maybe worth pointing out, I know a couple people were asking about it, was adding the other effects on top of it. So like now that this is instantiated in Ableton in this case, you could actually add, you know, the delay or the filter. I know I was playing with that one a lot. So you can add that after the effects. So then you're already getting all the ambiances and like the delays and stuff that the mixed effect and the ambiances add. And then you could like also run the entire thing through one of the other UJAM effects or finishers, which I also think is a lot of fun with the multi-out support. So instead of just piping everything through one stereo output, you can split it out and have, you know, like only have something affecting the hi-hats, or only have something else affecting, the kick or whatever.
Totally true. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we can just play around. Someone actually specifically requested putting retro on top of Gloom. So let's just get some kind of decent sound going in Gloom. Like something a little less crazy, and then we can play around with some effects. That's pretty cool. Yeah, let's say that. Oh, well, we're also already hearing the default retro effect. That's my bad.
Yeah.
Let's see, but let's go through some retro effects on top of it. So this is what it sounded like without retro. So you got a nice basic minimal kind of house beat. And then once we go with retro, yeah, just so much variation within a finisher title. Like every effect is so different.
That actually sounds really nice.
Yeah. Specifically with Gloom,
If you automated that throughout like the verse or something, like it would just increase over 4 bars and then like suck back down. That would be...
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, like that would be nice.
Super cool. Yeah, finishers are great. I mean, this isn't a finisher focused stream, but I have to just say, if you like the creative effects that come within titles, they're more or less akin to finishers. Like the single finisher modes within a finisher title are kind of the equivalent of what a mix mode in a beatmaker is. Like they're basically just multi-effects that are designed for a certain purpose. And we're looking at retro now. Finisher retro is kind of a lo-fi retro finisher title. So this one specifically, all the modes within here we have them categorized by decade, which is kind of cool. So you've got anything from like ambiances to like amping modes to like lo-fi, low fidelity stuff. So definitely check out finishers and put those on top. And then really briefly, I will also put a UFX on top because UFX is really cool. I think delay would be interesting on Gloom.
Yeah, delay with the glitch sub finisher thingy within it. That was actually a lot of fun.
Nice. Let's see.
Or there's a category of effects that are glitches or something like that, because there's like multiple different ones, I think.
Let's see. I actually delay the UFX stuff. I haven't had enough time to use meaningfully in my production.
If you go to the bottom right thingy, the finisher up, you turn that on, and then in there's a subcategory called glitch.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Those things. That was what I was playing with, and that was actually super fun.
Let's see. So this is finisher delay. You got a nice little UFX delay. You've got a nice animation. So this is all the way down mix. Let's turn the retro off real quick. So you actually hear some tonal things.
And then as you cycle through,
yeah,
if you cycle through the different glitches, there's some that are like more choppy, stuttery things and whatever.
Right. I'm at 100% wet now. Here, let's go down a little. Nice. That's a fun one. That's cool. Cool. Someone asked a question I'm going to try to address here. Any feedback regarding the V2 versus V3 design and the fact a lot of users much preferred the V2 versions? Yeah, well, and they're talking about the old Beatmaker versus the unified Beatmaker 3. I think the nature of that response is just that, of course, if you're used to a workflow, it might feel disruptive when you change it. We did do user research when we were developing this and looking at the different options. There's a lot of variety in the series. The kits have different instruments. They're not always the same 16 instruments. So in unifying both the one-shots of all kits in all beatmakers and the phrases of all beatmakers into one unique keyboard that's immediately accessible, this was the result that's proved best with the users that we studied. And we studied current users of beatmakers, and we studied non-users. So people who didn't know UJAM, we also interviewed them. And this was the takeaway. This was the best solution at the moment. And the idea was that the launch of Beatmaker 3 would never be the end of Beatmaker. So obviously we're hearing the feedback. Our goal as UJAM is to always develop the most meaningful tools for you within our nature. So we like to have really creative effects, really accessible controls, and usually beautiful and inspiring UIs. So I think that we've really designed that paradigm into Beatmaker 3, and from here we will iterate. So like some people were frustrated by the keyboard layout. Maybe adding a legacy version is a solution. Like there are solutions that we can do to satisfy the people that did have a workflow already in the old version. But I think as a whole, people that have been coming to Beatmaker for the first time in Beatmaker 3 have been really satisfied with it. So it's been been cool to hear the feedback, but obviously, you know, we're well aware that changing things might frustrate people, and we're really open to talking about those things with you guys, and we actually appreciate when you vocalize frustrations, because that's how we make sure we're hitting the nail on the head for you guys, because we do this to make products that are actually useful, not just to monetize and make as much money as possible, you know. So that's a long-winded answer, but yeah. Generally, but yeah, I think that's, I don't know. I think I feel like we've covered quite a lot. And
yeah, if anyone has any like super burning questions, I suppose now's the time.
Yeah, let's leave the floor another minute or so. But in the meantime, again, congrats to the winners, and thank you everybody who tuned in today. And Cameron, especially Venus Theory, thank you for taking the time to sit down with us today. And
yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was a good time. And if you guys have not seen his video that he did with Gloom on scoring, and if you're interested in scoring and his production technique, that's a really cool video. Like I said, I think it's like 20 or so minutes long, but it's like really detailed, and I learned a lot from it and watched how you work on a project, which is cool. So go check it out. The link is in the chat. I think Simon pinned it there. So
and then immediately following this, I get to go do that in real life again.
yeah. Now you got to go meet your deadlines again. So
right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that, you know, it's always fun when a game is coming out in like 2 weeks and you're like, cool, I'm just like going to be super stressed out and not sleep until the end of the month.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it goes well with whatever you're working on. And thank you all again for tuning in. I'm Adam. This has been Cameron, and we are going to sign off now. So have a great rest of your week. Go check out Beatmaker GLOOM, and yeah, keep an eye out for the next Beatmaker release, which is coming out in a few days. See you guys. Thank you very much.
All right. Bye, everybody.